Hello again. I am here with a book for you, or actually a book series this time. My cat is here as well. He is currently kind of stalking a bug that he's pretty sure he saw, but he's actually fallen asleep in the attempt. So we shall try not to wake him. So I wanted to tell you about the Mapp and Lucia books. So I recently read Miss Mapp, which is one of the books by E.F. Benson in his Mapp and Lucia series. And I had the idea of reviewing it for you, but in a way, books like these are classics and don't really need a review from me per se. So I thought I'd instead just share these books with you in case they appeal and you might like to check them out. They're a bit cozy and British and funny, and I think that might appeal to some of you quite well. Especially because it's kind of fall season where I feel like cozy reading is a wonderful thing. So I came across these books through reading E.F. Benson's ghost stories, being a lover of that genre as I am. And I think I also remember seeing them in a fictional book where a character was reading them, but I don't remember which book. So I mean, that happens. Benson was a prolific writer. He wrote in a variety of genres, fiction and nonfiction. In this series, there are 6 books, and then there are 2 shorter stories, kind of almost novella length. These were all written later in his career in the 20s and 30s. We are given a loving but sharply incisive view of upper middle class life in the English village before the Second World War. So in some ways, they're a snapshot of a certain kind of life and personality that was around in the UK in this time period, because there's quite a lot of change between the wars. It was very distinct time socially. But to begin at the beginning, the series started in 1920 with the book Queen Lucia. It introduced us to Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, who goes by Lucia. That's mostly because it sounds kind of Italian and sets her a bit apart from the hoi polloi. She has her husband that she calls Peppino, her best friend Georgie, who is rather wonderful, and then she has a rivalry with Miss Daisy Quantock, who has the audacity to try and rival her unspoken title of social queen in the small town of Rhizome. So then in the second book, in 1922, which is called Miss Mapp, we find the small seaside town of Tilling, where we're introduced to Elizabeth Mapp, who rules her social circle with an iron fist and a kid glove. And then in 27, Lucia in London. Lucia moves her household there and kind of causes a bit of jealousy with the people of Rhizome. And in 31, in Mapp and Lucia, Lucia moves to Tilling with Georgie after her husband's death. And she and Mapp kind of have an all-out but very polite war with each other. Lucia's progress and trouble for Lucia followed in the 1930s. So the books were and remain today quite popular, which led to the stories being continued by another or maybe 2 other authors. I'm not sure. I haven't read any of the ones that were written by other authors. I tend to be wary of that kind of thing. So if any of you have read those, let me know what you thought of them. Sometimes those kind of things can be fine. Sometimes they just feel like a weird cash-in, or I don't know. Anyway, so the books themselves are about small villages in the 1920s is their setting. So this is a kind of place where upper middle class women live in like beautiful little homes with gardens and a loyal maid or 2. They attend things like bridge parties, sometimes like golf, or they paint watercolors, and they're generally fiercely competitive with each other. They're mostly single, either through never having married or through losing their husband at some point, or outliving their husband, as people sometimes say. So in their social group, there are a few men, but they're generally single bachelors. It's kind of interesting reading this. While the lifestyle that they live now, you would be quite wealthy to live that way. They actually have a limited income and often talk about having to economize in these books. So yeah, I mean, I find this kind of interesting. I mean, now owning your own home and having a garden, having a maid or a dressmaker or that kind of thing, that's no longer part of the normal household budget for a person. But it was really normal back then. It was unusual not to have some kind of hired help in some way. So most homes, even those with very limited incomes, often had help in this era. But I mean, that's just a little digression. It's just something to give a bit of context. The plots themselves usually revolve around some small event in each chapter, with Benson having a very sharp and incisive wit, and he makes callbacks across the book to previous little moments or bon mots or that kind of thing as well. It's all very low stakes, maybe a bridge game where an invitation goes missing, one character gaining attention for a new dress and the other needing to outdo her at the next gathering, hosting duties, spying on neighbors, misunderstandings, that kind of thing. The situations themselves are funny in a small way, but the way Benson has created Lucia and Mapp is so funny. It's so satirical and it's so spot on. I mean, I know people like this. He really knows his character types and he creates the world they live in for us beautifully as well. And then he makes fun of it. It's delightful. The women in these books are like the busybodies and gossips in your own neighborhood or family who know each other's business. They're kind of outwardly friendly, but sometimes inwardly seething or inwardly smug. They have rivalries that go on for years and jockeying for position, and their manners don't completely hide their snobbery and social climbing. So while these books have their very own distinct style and plot lines, of course, to me, these books kind of fit with the oeuvre, shall we say, of Woodhouse's Jeeves and Wooster for like that time period, that dry humor and the kind of social satire and the subtlety as well. Even a little bit Cold Comfort Farm, perhaps, that was written in the 30s. And that kind of was making fun of pastoral kind of authors like D.H. Lawrence, that like literary take on country living and that kind of thing. So this kind of fits in there with that kind of style and humor. So Benson really knew his type. Tilling is not so subtly based on Rye in Sussex. He lived there from 1918, and he was actually mayor of Rye in the 30s, and Lucia in one of her books becomes mayor as well, so he knows what he's talking about. Rism is based on Broadway in Worcestershire, and the house Mallards, which is famously Mapp's little abode. At one point, Lucia lives there in some books. That's based on Lamb House. So Lamb House was Benson's own home for quite a while, and famously where Henry James and Rumer Godden lived at different times. So the house is interesting. It has quite a literary history. I think it has one of the little blue plaques now that are famous in the UK. And the garden room that plays a part in the stories, that was real, but sadly destroyed by a bomb during World War II, which kind of brings me back to that thought of like between the wars, you know? So yeah, I mean, perhaps Mapp and Lucia themselves as characters could really be called villains or anti-heroes in a way, but they're kind of made to be too funny and too small to really be titled that. Lucia is vain, grand, stubborn. She likes to pepper her sentences with little Italian phrases, and she puts on airs and things like that. She's a bit of a showman. For some reason, I like her a little bit more than Mapp, but I like their books the same, if that makes sense. Mapp is fairly harmless. She's snarky and scheming. She watches her neighbors like a hawk, and it's hilarious to imagine her sticking her head out of windows and her nose into everybody's business and thinking that she's being very subtle when she's doing it. Her machinations are very funny, and the books are all the funnier when these women are caught out and taken down a peg, which is, you know, kind of part of the fun, really. The stakes are always really small, a little humiliation or a slip down the social ladder for a while. I mean, I think, in fact, like some of these things could be quite stressful in real life. For example, like for me, I know that I get nervous sometimes if, like I want everything to be nice and comfortable and like tidy if I'm hosting friends at my house. So, you know, that would be a little bit stressful for me. But it's also still low stakes. Does that make sense? Here in the books, all the sharp edges are rounded a little bit. It's all very sweet and funny. No stress. Very relaxing reads. So that said, I think my favorite character is Georgie. He's Lucia's mostly loyal best friend. He's a bachelor. He goes everywhere with her. He plays piano with her. He understands her need to social climb and knows the local gossip everywhere. And he's like generally a loyal friend. They have this like funny, silly baby talk thing that they do, which is really funny. It's like their 1920s version of having like that silly in-joke that you have with your best friend that only you get, like your own little language. And I find that really lovely. Lucia bosses him around and is sort of the leader of the two of them. But every now and then, I mean, he loves being friends with the queen bee, like that's kind of his status. That like, I'm with her. But every now and then he's not above rebelling a little bit and kind of undercutting her maybe, or taking her down a peg himself. So if Georgie sounds a little bit like fabulous Lucia's gay best friend, you are onto something a little bit. Benson was discreet about it, but he was gay, and the humor and the things in these books are quite camp. The whole thing is quite camp. The way that Georgie is written, and also his sisters, for example, are gently coded as gay. There's a few characters that are gay, but it's sort of subtle. It's never outwardly stated, and it's probably sort of done that way so it would kind of go over some people's heads if they didn't know about that kind of thing, if that makes sense. It was the 20s and the 30s. But it's such a wonderful added layer of humor in some moments, and it's really not all that subtle. Like, if you knew, you knew. I haven't read all of these books, only a few of them, but they're really good. They're cozy and small problems. Sometimes we love small problems. The drama is always funny, and they're very, very British. They're just an absolute delight. They're not hard to find either. Like some books from the 20s you have to look for. These, your local library is going to have them. And also, there are 2 adaptations for TV that you can find. So there's the 1985 series. It has 10 episodes that take their like plots and things from the last 3 novels. And that one stars Geraldine McEwen as Lucia, Prunella Scales as Mapp, and Nigel Hawthorne as Georgie. And then in 2014, there were 3 episodes. And those ones adapt plots from the books Mapp and Lucia and Queen Lucia. And that has Anna Chancellor as Lucia, Miranda Richardson as Mapp, and Steve Pemberton as Georgie. Both of these series, they're obviously far apart in date, but they're both just called Mapp and Lucia, which makes them a little hard to differentiate if you're trying to sort of find them to watch. I think one was Channel 4 and one was BBC. They're both really, really good, actually. They capture the spirit of the books, but in different ways, which I kind of like. Maybe like different aspects of them or whatever. In the 2014 series, Lucia and Georgie at the piano together is like delightful. They're so like, I don't know, in this series, they're just lovely friends and playing together, and it's just really lovely to watch. But in the 1985 one, I think that series may actually be my favorite. I absolutely love Geraldine McEwen's line delivery. She is so sharp in anything she's in. And in here, she has that subtle smile and the little gimlety eyes. The actress really understands this world. And for me, she embodies Lucia and plays her so well. But that's just personal preference. I would say if this kind of, story world interests you, or if you like the books, I just say watch both of them if you're kind of into that. But yeah, that's the world of Mapp and Lucia, basically. If you've read these, please let me know, because I would love to know some of your favorite little bits from this, or characters, or, that kind of thing. But yeah, for now, as they say in Tilling, au reservoir. You can check out some of my other videos. I also have another channel and socials, so you can find links below if you want more of that. And if you want to hang out again, remember to like and subscribe. And you can always leave a comment, let me know what you thought, or let me know what else you might want to see. Thank you.